Mel, as you know, we've been creating a series of videos on the history of our church, celebrating the last 130 years. As one of the former and beloved pastors of this congregation, the longest serving pastor of this congregation, you're a big part of that history, for which we are all so thankful. You have led this congregation through times of growth and times of change. I give thanks to God for that leadership. We're blessed to have you still part of this congregation. So as I recall, you and your family were appointed here in 1984, and shortly after, we celebrated the 100th anniversary celebration of the church on Prospect Avenue. Would you share a little bit of that with us?
Sure, I'd be glad to. We basically were celebrating about 4 years later, or 5 years later, 1989, the 100th celebration of our beginnings. And it really was a wonderful time together. Our bishop, Susan Morrison at the time, came, joined us for a special service, fellowship, luncheon, and so forth afterwards. And I do remember one of our members, Ethel Ahmet, had written a little booklet. It was called The Beacon on the Hill, which was a little bit about our history. It was quite well done. And it was something that was celebrating both the fact of our establishment as a people, and not just a building, but also saying we're a people who want to go out and bring others to the love of God through Jesus Christ. And I just happened this morning to find this sheet that at one time, around that time, our mission was growing, glowing, and going in the name of Christ. So Ethel was trying to bring that out in the Beacon on the Hill. And she did a really nice job with that. And then part of the celebration was also digging out the cornerstone, taking out things that were initially placed there at its origin, and then replacing some other things in the cornerstone that we thought had meaning for future generations to come. So it was a great celebration.
And I hope this one will be as well. I can imagine in that celebration, one day those things will come out again.
Yes.
Of that cornerstone.
I would like to be around, but I don't think that's going to happen.
We certainly experienced great growth during your tenure here, attendance that tripled and became difficult to be in that one space, especially for Christian education programs. So the congregation began to address the difficult question of should they remodel or consider other options.
Right, and so we did consider other options. We were at that time about 180 in worship in a facility that had about 120 opportunities for seating. And you know the old slogan about once 80% of your seats are full, you should be thinking about going beyond. So we were at 2 services for a while, and then at one point we went to 3 services, and then we had about close to 100 in Sunday school. So we were going to different homes, and the parsonage had at least 1 classroom in it, as I recall. So then we looked at parking, and we had just maybe about 6 parking spaces for people coming to church. So the borough was very kind. On Sundays, they would let us line the cars up along Prospect Avenue and along the other 2 streets. But obviously, that became an issue for us. So we began to form what was called a vision team to look at possibilities of where we go from there, and realized we were pretty landlocked. We couldn't stay at this place. And so eventually we started looking for places. We came out to about 6 places, as I recall, and we left the congregation vote on which places might be best, and we narrowed it down to 2, and then eventually 1, that one was right here. And Eleanor Mark actually sold this land to us. She was one of the parishioners. And so we bought this land in 1996 for $150,000, 8 acres. And we then settled that in 96 and called it the Claiming of the Land celebration. And actually a year later, we burned a mortgage for $150,000. So it was a great time, a good time.
That sounds wonderful, to be able to pay off a mortgage within a year. Yes. But with land claimed,
yes,
you still had hard work to do. designing and building on that land. What were some of the difficult decisions?
Well, I think one of the things is, you've heard the slogan, home is where your heart is. And for so many people in the congregation, they had grown up there, their grandparents had been there, maybe even great-grandparents, and they had children who been baptized in the church, weddings, funerals, and that was a hard time for some of those men and women in the church, because they were saying, this is who we've been, this is how we are, this is how we sort of identify ourselves, and how do we open the door for something new? So, but the people were just great in their willingness to be able to move down the road a little bit and say, we're going to expand in order to, what was our slogan, grow, glow, and go. And if this is part of the going, then we're going to do that. And so through prayer and much thought and processing, we eventually came to this place, and we brought along with us, as you can see, there's the stained glass, part of the stained glass window, which was over the entrance, and also some of the names of the people who had initially contributed, as well as the, I guess it was around 1948 or something like that, was the altar that was made. We were able to bring that also, which we just, brand new communion table, just came in, last week, right? Mm-hmm. So we were able to make those moves, and I think there's always that sort of drop in the stomach hesitation, but I think at the same time, most people were saying, well, I guess my heart will find a new home at some level in this place. So we moved in this direction.
So with that courage to go, then began some building here on this site.
And, when we first moved in that direction, I thought, boy, I'm not sure I want to go through this. Because I had talked with other pastors who went through building relocations and so forth. And some of those had not been that positive. I guess because people sometimes would be upset about not getting what they wanted, or they had a different vision of what would happen and so forth. So I thought, well, how can I help to kind of help ourselves in this process? So I remember asking people to answer the question of whether or not they really believed God was guiding them to do this. And secondly, could they handle the possibility of strong disagreement within a team and not be hurt or feel like they've been slighted, because we need to be honest about who we are in this. So as I recall, it was about 9 people on the building team. And to me, it was one of the highlights of what I experienced with this congregation. Just good men and women who knew who they were in God, were able to hear each other out, and also they were good at what they did. And because this was something new to me, I didn't know what I was doing a lot of the time. But as you can imagine, nobody got exactly what they wanted. There were times when I didn't get what I wanted, but we found agreement and a real sense of community and union in many things. And so I guess it was 1999 then that we eventually celebrated the beginning of construction here at this level, at this particular place. And that was in April, and then we completed it in December of '99, and then I think the last service at the previous church was December 12th. I do remember the day coming out here, though, and watching the cross being planted, sort of claiming the land, and having various members take a shovelful. And I know there's a picture somewhere in one of the notebooks of Kelly Ruse, who is now Mrs. Henderson, right? And as a little girl, helping to dig that first shovelful. And it's great to see how her mother came here. Now she's a participant. And so the love and the joy continues to carry on. And we weren't just building buildings, we were building the opportunity for ministry. And that really came through. So then, what do we do with the old building? Well, our church had over the years a really close relationship with Cristo Rey United Methodist, the Hispanic church that was at that time in Tufkenneman. And I had been on different teams looking at possibilities of relocating them and so forth, and not knowing that at some point our church would be having a facility that would be available. So it just seemed really right to sell that facility to them. And as you know, they're up on the hill. They're a beacon on the hill right now for Christ. So God was at work, and God still is.
And we celebrate ways that we are still in relationship with Cristo Rey, certainly with our Vacation Bible School, working together with them, and ways in which we're still able to open, grow, and serve here and through that congregation there. In this place, we've been able to follow in faithful footsteps of those who've come before. The families who have grown and expanded, new families who have joined this church and who've joined this congregation. And we've opened our doors in incredible ways that I wonder if that visioning team imagined those years.
If I can interrupt, I think that's really been one of the beautiful things of being a part of this, is because we envisioned something like the various programs that are happening here all day long, and that we wanted to say it was a 24/7 facility. It wasn't here for us, it was here for the community. And that's all been happening under each of the pastors here and under your ministry. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
I give thanks to God for that. I particularly celebrate the way Children's Morning Out was an outgrowth of that happened here in this place. And as our classrooms move to the other end of the hall, now have up to 5 classrooms serving here in our community. I celebrate Family Promise, almost upon the first year of completion, that is possible in this facility and fits some of that original vision. Just 2 examples of ministries that built upon the faithfulness of God and God's people. As we go forward, I look forward to how God is moving in this place. God has always been moving here in the small village of West Grove and now in the bustling town of West Grove. It's the good people who have listened, who have discerned, and who have followed well. My prayer is that we, with the gratitude of rootedness, continue to grow in Christ, and that we look forward to, even ambitiously, what God is doing in the next 130 years. So be it. Amen.